response to the evidence presented to us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering, how would you like to do it, sir? Would you like to ask us your residual questions first? Or would you like us to sort of highlight the things that probably go back and do some reform first? It would be useful to probably hear from the panel.
First?
Yeah.
Okay. So you have a few more questions.
Sorry about that. So it's sort of it is a question. With the treaty settlement land overlap, being quite focused, not focused, but has a resource consent process, or we didn't meet committed. I was just wondering, as part of council's process, so is there a streamlined process that council might undertake? So it's a random question in regards to Māori purpose zone or treaty settlement land. And I suppose what I mean by that is, like many big developments, are there pre-application, is pre-application discussions part of that process? Is because as a part of that then refines things that yes, these are permitted, these aren't permitted, and helps refine things. And then to follow through from that, when applicants come through with an application, it's quite like anything, I suppose. Not easy, but just streamlined to go through a process as opposed to having to not renegotiate, but having further conversations and discussion, I suppose. So in a short term, is there a fast track streamlined process that can support Māori purpose zone through settlement overlays? Is there anything that council?
Yeah, I think we'll write that comprehensively, because I think there's a number of things that staff do rather than ad hoc here. But I think in principle, the consenting team does engage with prospective applicants across the board, but I know they particularly do talk with groups that used to do applying development. I know Wai Teresa helps in other ways as well, helps navigate through body land court processes as well for whānau. So, but rather than ad hoc, I probably put together just a list of things that we know we do. And as noted previously, by council just passed a resolution to be more active in the game room facilitation space. So to be implemented, but
fantastic. No, that's great, because that answered one of my other questions in regards to what support or what mechanisms does council get in play, and I think that's what you did give a response going forward. I might pass it on to my colleagues, and sorry, I like to come and check my questions. So come back with some questions if I need to. Thank you.
Yeah, so MPZ are correct. Question about carrying capacity, I think there was some where have you guys landed in terms of using the carrying? When I first read that, right back at the beginning, it sort of made a bit of sense to sort of say the sustainable capacity. Do we need carrying? What does carrying add?
yeah, I know
I can't recall whether you made a comment.
Yeah, we clarified that it was largely around infrastructure provision.
Yes.
That was the purpose of it. I don't know actually what the text changes were.
We recommended to you that it would be changed from sustainable, so delete carrying and insert service.
Oh, servicing capacity. Oh, that's very focused there.
Yes.
Very narrow.
Yes.
Okay, no, that's even more to
And in theory, it's the same time as like an intrusive thing.
I have got equipment like that, small scale commercial, so that's been dealt with.
That was one of the areas that I think we did want to respond on. I think we've addressed it, and I think we've probably, on the face of it, we'll probably retain that position at this stage. Small
position.
with position, and actually that's right. There is that's right, Myra. We'll essentially small scale, which recognises the activity baseline and other. We keep that included, and that provides for, I guess, wider, anticipates wider commercial activity on occasion.
So just to follow on with that, in the treaty settlement layer, there is reference to delete small scale, reference in policy. Treaty settlement policy 2, and in your evidence, I found it, under, you reinforce that yes, delete small scale in your treaty settlement layer. So I'm just wondering, will that be the same for other purposes, which you're indicating you will retain it? So I can find you the reference. Let me just find this. Sorry, teams. Also, treaty settlements, policy 2, small scale delete. In your 42A report, it's paragraphs 111 to 112. 42A says to delete small scale. One, triple 2. Your analysis makes reference to the deletion of the word small scale.
So I think what's here is, the same sort of the changes that are made in the purpose 42A have not carried over to the recommendation and the treaty settlement, and the intention is that they both exist.
Right, and you'll come back and clarify what the same will be.
Yes.
Okay, good.
That is going to be to retain small scale, as we to retain small scale and insert other people. So they will both be the same.
Yes. Okay.
And it was the same submission. I think the same submission was made to both the Maple with loan trees.
Yeah, to delete. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so I sort of, sort of couple questions on like Gates witnesses today. It's the recognition of Maori purpose zone and treaty settlement overlay being undertaken either adjacent within a rural environment, adjacent to a rural underlying zone. But it's also recognising that the activity will be different for production. And so in that sense, you're going to see a change in character on Maori zone land and on the treaty settlement overlay land. There will be a change in character that will not be the same as the existing environment that it surrounds. That's focused and potentially on production associated with that. So just looking at the policies for Maori purpose zone, which are similar, let's go with Maori purpose. Policies 3 and 4. So you've got 3A compatible with surrounding activity, and I'm wondering whether that's setting you up for failure, because I think what you're actually doing is expecting judgment, and you're providing for it shamelessly. It seems to me that you want to do yes, it will be changed because you're enabling for a bunch of the number of multi activities. so small scale, commercial activities, which will be different in rural production, but not necessarily in the cap. So I'm just sort of wondering whether that sort of ends up becoming a bit of a difficult policy provision. We're expecting change, but we've got a policy direction that says compatible with surrounding activities. Now, you could argue that compatible with surrounding activities does anticipate some change, but there will be those who argue that it doesn't.
Could we go the SHPL not incompatible?
Well, maybe. I'm just sort of thinking, is that sort of setting you up for a failure? Because I think the other one that I thought was the other one that really bothered me is death. Maintains character and amenity of the surrounding area. Now, character, rural character isn't a problem. Rural amenity is the nice things in a rural. Rural character is a whole bunch of things, including things that aren't nice. You know, like smells and noise and dust and stuff that's associated with rural production, in quarrying and mining. And I'm just sort of thinking about the maintenance of the amenity of the surrounding area, and that's something that could be seen as the development of Papakara housing, that's not consistent with the character and amenity of the surrounding area, which is predominantly rural production, and it's one running very side.
I guess the question I would ask of the panel is, I mean, there are a number of things here. One of them is the level of permitted activity, which is probably ballpark would meet that. I would suggest that there's another level of fixed management that would be required then if that's what the panel would like to approach, noting that essentially it would be promoting potentially adverse effects. Unlike adverse effects. So,
I'm not saying you delete it. I'm just saying maybe you have to think about how to make it work. That is responsive to what you're enabling.
have you seen any particular wording, Mr. Chair, in the submissions that you've seen that would be helpful to us?
Some of them, I mean, we can go back to the rules zone. Hearings before that. Hearing before, we did talk about when you say amenity, you say amenity values. So I'm just wondering if you want to sort of say about rural character and amenity values. Rural character will then, if you say rural character, then you are including the bad bit.
Yes.
Those the effects of rural production. Whereas amenity values are positive things. That might give and then also an applicant under this zone, under these policies, is going to be consistent with rural character because it's guys doing horticulture, it's dustier and housing operation, 8 at night, and lights and all that sort of stuff. It's guys got a poultry farm here, that we are put to the fixed rural character. So we're fixed. But I'm just sort of, I'm also a little bit worried that these may be used pushed back against the form that we're trying to make. So I'm going to leave that for you to have a think about that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think there's some discussion around built form, and I must admit I didn't really hear anything that was any different to what could be anticipated in a rule in that discussion.
Now, this is actually rural, again, when you say rural character enables here large utilitarian buildings without windows. So again, that might help that discussion.
Mr. Chair, I think I understand.
Yeah.
Like it is the evidence position points to the same policy to see.
Yeah. So yeah, the compromise use, I was going to talk about this one next. A compromise use, I mean, it's almost like a reverse sensitivity type policy. Is that a reverse sensitivity? Have they got a reverse sensitivity plate to it?
Yes.
And then that's probably okay. I think that will be another consideration. Yes. Yeah, well,
It kind of points to,
we might have to really
to it just, this concept just points directly to the tension of the in both the PPZ and the desire for enabling development and on land that's predominantly rural.
I mean, in policy four, I think policy four reads quite well. I mean, that's sort of like, that reads basically like discretion.
Yeah.
And policy three is constraining, that's the constraining policy, where it's full of the enabling one.
Yes.
One of the other questions I'm going to keep this really broad, and I'd like you to respond in writing, don't have that answer today. But question I want to ask is, when it comes to Papakainga housing in the overlay of the site, how much control does council really need to serve? Given the levels of control that may exist already in the other instruments in sense, how much control does council need to assert and to avoid what effects, and how much of that could actually be left there on the individual to determine their own needs?
The government might answer that very short, Mr. Chair. I answer that for us. Mr. Chair, I know that there is an ES document or MPS document.
Oh, really?
Yes.
On Papakainga housing?
Yes.
Oh, really? Okay.
So
You said
well,
it's an exposure draft, haven't you?
no, I have not, no. But I know that council has had staff that have been engaged and talked to on the process. I feel we possibly need to answer it, but I'm also aware that that answer will almost certainly be irrelevant by the time we get to it.
Maybe you just talk about high or low.
Yeah.
Are the government going high or low?
I think they are, from what I understand, very enabling.
Okay. Oh, so
Again, like but until it's gazetted, obviously we don't know. So my
okay, well then, don't answer that question. I mean, we want to leave it to what you want to find. You seem to be saying that something's coming out quite soon.
yeah, look, there's going to be an announcement, I think, on Friday about not necessarily content, but the range of statutory documents being updated. Yes, I think we could generally pitch at you the things that we think that might be reasonable and appropriate for us to consider. But in saying that, like, get across a whole lot of different environments as well. So if we, rather than keep it to, most keep to the Papakainga issue and leave the other hearing four topics out of it, this one I think is just to clarify, rather than go through all the provisions.
Yeah, I mean, the question too was specifically regards to Papakainga. It does get a little bit messy when you start thinking about other activities. But I think Papakainga is sort of like something where I think that that's quite one question. I mean, I think our sort of initial feeling is we would like that to be as enabling as possible. That decision to be in their hands as much as possible, and then council control or any of those things that it really does need to exercise some.
Just at a high level, I think the more there's always that you give with one hand, you take with another. So obviously, as I said, the provisions are relatively by their nature. And, it's, for example, it's not adaptive site size location overly, but to get certainty to manage the things required, there might need to be more controls to offset that enabling part of it. But we'll have a think about it, and we'll
Thank you. Get a sense of the tensions and the expectations on council to manage things, from the way the submissions today was kind of the book-ended way, the due trust, to including third in that is a clear indication. Second submission to what the issues are from the other end of the other part of the story, that what the expectations are of council to control. If you've got a neighbouring development, that's the balance you get trying to manage.
The neighbours.
How many effects, potential effects, effects on the joint adjacent?
That's when I talk about compatible. What might be good for one is not necessarily, that disturbs the status quo. Then, people can driving down and be very compatible.
Yeah, I think it's, officer said, we had a really good discussion about Teo Coding's position. Is not quite unique, but there's a lot of participation, there's a lot of work within themselves. Where that might not necessarily always be the case in instances.
So it's treaty settlement league, I think here what I'm saying is the situation of settlement entities being their own neighbours. So in terms of development, it might be different to develop on their terms. So we're in some parts of the district, we're looking at, for instance, yes, my purpose zone is adjoined by my purpose, but maybe from the west and the north to some extent, but in the east, that's not the situation. We're looking at the same in the east of the district when the Garden settlement comes on stream. So the settlement tree settlement land, the neighbours will not necessarily be other trees, their own settlement land or other area settlement land. It'll be more general land. So then you can different.
Yeah, so how we get a set of provisions in the district plan that situation versus what Teresa's talking about is challenging, and I don't know if Teddy was in the room, but I mean that's where things like spatial strategies and spatial planning in those areas can actually help to be more enabling, because we can take a bit more of a bespoke look at those individual situations. And I think like Teresa's kind of pointed out the challenges that we're trying to balance. We'll answer the question. There might be a few writers in that.
Sure. But look at this way, if you need to delay the response to time of the release of the actual direction of the document, whatever that might be.
Yeah, look, I think,
Otherwise, we'll only come back to you.
yeah, my understanding is that November is the date that 17 of these will end.
On the national direction.
So
Right, but still, but an exposure draft is still happening. That's what gets notified.
hope so. Yeah, I'm not certain, but I'm sure.
So yeah, I mean, the thing that we all know that, and you can't listen to those because there are a number of steps you just have to take. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's all the questions for me. Thank you.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I suppose for me, it's what are the processes that I'm sure that upcoming housing can move fast. And here today, like people from Awanui, they started an incorporation in 1964. Matoni did the same kind of thing. and, different area responded in different ways, but there was quite a loss of land as a result of the rating because of coastal proximity, etc. And you hear it all along. And the Artico people got the Y25 case coming up. That is unresolved from the Muiwhenua claims, and that's all going to impact. I suppose for me, it's how do we make this more enabling, and I'll go back to the Oako. The only house they used to have was four komato flats that was seen as radical. They had four komato flats, and then they developed a couple of houses, different kind of houses, and I think people are doing housing studies that there's all kinds of needs. It's not all big family needs all the time. Some people are single living. In Auckland, they've got a whole building, 13 stories high, which is aimed at homeless people who are not the kind of area that you see all in Auckland. And absolutely beautiful what area doing. They've given the tools to make it happen, but they're using their resources. So yeah, for me, Papakai is major in terms of putting people in homes. And and the other thing I find that counter to that is people have to live in substandard homes just to, and that's always been the reality in the far north, that people live in substandard homes that others would condemn, because at least it's a roof, at least it's their space. So yeah, that's what I'm interested in, and hopefully these so-called new start soon to expedite all that stuff. I suppose this thing is how do we move. I don't want to answer you to answer that now, but wait for whatever's coming out. But it's really difficult. That's $600 a week rent. And people don't even make that. A wage, if you had a 30-hour wage, no. If you make the 700, and that's 3 or 5 at least, it's that's what about finding hours in this stuff really.
What we attempted to do with the provisions of the zoning and overlay is exactly that. It's a question, how do we make this more amazing and whole? Previous the sub-959 and land overlay was that we were to be more enabling, be what the current district plan is. In the current plan, there are no public provisions, and there are public provisions, but there's none in the residential zones currently. There is in the rural production in the coastal environment, but not across the whole plan. So what we've proposed here it is exactly that. But what it isn't, unfortunately, which is what Tiffany was alluding to, is, and also what Tamataki is alluding to, it's not a hands-off. Isn't that? But
And the
I
other
think it's more than that.
And the other parts to it, it's not just the council alone, things like access to banks, access to loans that you can't do on Māori land. Whatever.
Yes, correct. It's exactly what Steve said, the 3 C's, capacity, capability, and capital. Those have always been barriers to development in
So, no doubt you might have questions around development areas, and I didn't see there was any particular triggers around that. I think with James making commentary about spatial planning, maybe that's something that might address it, but again, what's the trigger for this plan? So that could be all about, because like any plans, such as structure plans and things, are usually through a plan change process anyway, so it still has to do that. Yeah, I just wanted to flag that. Another question that I had was around in the tree symbol layer, and in particular in the overview, there makes reference where should further land need to be incorporated into this treaty settlement land overlay, council will initiate the plan change process to apply treaty settlement overlay over the returned lands. What I wanted to know was how will timing of a council initiated plan change process apply when treaty settlement lands are returned? And I sort of added a question of my own here. Could this potentially include discussions to prepare integrated development plans to be included in the plan change process? I suppose this reference is around land returned as treaty settlements as opposed to another process on how it would be developed. So either way, we will plan changes, but this one's council initiated as a result of the settlement. Yeah.
I would think that the scope of these plan changes just retain, if it's a matter of fact around the land, it will be done relatively quickly and with low cost.
Yeah.
I think you do have some complexity when you talk about development plans. And while I don't want to make an entirely sweeping statement, my experience is that the settlement comes first a long way down the line. We get to that level of planning.
Yeah.
So that's not to say that will be exclusively the case in Parliament.
Yeah.
But it's often, it takes a while to transition into that post-government settlement entity and that to get on its feet.
Yeah. It will get 3 terms for our Awanui settlement, for Te Kawa, Te Awa settlement, and those first 3 terms, the first one's initial trustees and get around that, the next one's the trustees and what's the strategy, what's this, that, and the other, and then the 3rd term was got an operational term. So it took 3 terms, and our terms are 3 years for elections. Again, similar to council process, it takes time. But I suppose, it's just about timing of when council initiated plan changes potentially happen. And as you say, if it's stuck to what's the outcome from the settlement, can be quite simple. Sometimes.
Yeah. I would like to think, because we've got it, if this becomes up, if the means becomes operational, then the groundwork is done, and it's between council's operational staff and to watch the settlement processes, to be aware of one and to be proactive. And it's not so their responsibility.
Thank you.
The only rider, perhaps, and I'll defer to Teresa, is that the actual exchange of land might take a while. Whether that would be a rider on our ability to promote a plan change, and it probably won't happen at once as well. That would possibly be, but we'll respond to that. Yeah.
Because I think that's also part of the issues we've had with GIS data, historically data, and the 3 reasons we proposed district team, all lands, things have changed.
Data sharing. So another quick question that I had was the reference that Te Awa's planner made around the belief with wording around iwi plans and strategies, and Tipene had made reference that we're having discussions around MOUs, etc. What I wanted to ask, sorry, and I do have a question here, is sharing information protocols. So, from an iwi hapu management plan perspective, lodged with council, here's our list of iwi hapu management plans. And you've got that in the chat as well. With the response that we had from Te Awa saying we're talking to MOUs and we'll probably have reference to our plans and strategies, so it may not necessarily be lodged in a place where people are aware. strategy of Te Aupōuri is listed in the townspeople chapter, or where it may sit. It's about the sharing information protocols as opposed to here's a strategy, you probably need to talk to our Aupōuri, as opposed to here's a strategy council, can you get the strategy? My question I'm asking is, with the management plans, what's council's current process around sharing in the health and management plan? You've got them listed.
We give probably I'll actually refer to Teresa, but I'd say that Whanau District is a very different approach to any of the management plans that any other council I'm aware of.
Right.
But I'll defer to Teresa to explain that.
So as you report out, could the measure needs to take a little bit of chapter of the proposed strategy.
Yeah.
And to this point, they're not all available as direct link from the proposed strategy. Some are, and the ones that are the ones that those particular media haven't made public themselves. Okay. So our approach to them is that those documents are their documents, not council. They lodge them with council, yes, but they're not our documents to publicly to make publicly available. If they want to make it available, we can provide a link to that. And we have done those ones that applies to. If they don't provide a public link, because sometimes the EBIO's view is we don't want to provide a plan that somebody can just refer to without coming first to talk to us about what we do. So that's the approach we've taken today. I would qualify that by saying that those are launched through a process undertaken through Department. And through that team. So that's my understanding of the process, that I'm not that team. So yeah, this is more up to date.
I understand this, we help fund some of those as well.
Yes, we do.
We help fund them.
We do fund them. But at the end of the day, while we fund them, they're not out of their BIP, their be strategic, their FNDC, and husband, not I like something. So it's the document of ours. They just they can apply to us and to regional council. I think we fund 3 as I think the regional council is the same. And yeah, and if they choose to make the that's the choice.
Council may have a list of what's come through and what's been, but not necessarily like that public access. That's from all the conversations with the relevant.
So the scope of the agreements that was provided by Te Aupōuri is very wide. So commercial strategies, there may be things that are out of scope. For example, so we'll probably do a worries check as well on what was proposed. Just get some advice as to whether it can work in that way. You know, clearly there are parts of the Act that will defer you to when making an application to environmental management plans that they're embedded in the Act. But yeah, we'll have a look and see what wording is. Worries.
Thank you.
Potentially.
Yeah, great. There was reference to, could you just explain to me, and I read it, but you know, I need an example in my head, the difference between a GBA, gross business area, and the GFA. GFA, I've got a general understanding. The GBA is not familiar.
I think that there's a sort of historical context to that, and that actually being adverse to it, and who's the evidence that the GBA process with the transport chapter, that's where it's been used for, and I made a note to myself to check that, because it has been used
different places, interchanging us.
Yeah. But yes, so GBA is more related to transport pets.
Yeah.
And so the submission is mainly about replacing GBA with GBAs.
Thank you. The responses I received in regards to what are the support mechanisms from council's perspective that's come through with bring back a comprehensive response. So spatial planning, various components that are we could help. Okay, just some of my questions I had. Yeah, that was that development area. How can you that development area and spatial planning, the council's and how the plan works and relationships between spatial layers. I didn't see any necessarily triggers for development areas. And I did read in the 42As on this side, I can't get quite me, that there are no development areas in the council district at the moment. So yeah, what would what triggers potentially what to initiate a development area, whether it's through the spatial planning and then it follows through, where's that connection from spatial to district and implementation that can be done about too.
Even was to be able to go experience
I appreciate your response. Thank you.
Well done. Oh, so now you're trying to slightly more prepared response.
I did want, I just saw something about Maori cemetery, what company?
Yes, these are improvements.
Yeah. And so is that separate, like on the Maori land?
Yes, and I look at the same. Are you talking about the submission in the area school and you seek to prove exactly the submission? So there were two parts to it. I think one was recognising that the UPA is one taboo, which is already identified because it is a lot of people saying. And the second part to that was resourcing the upkeep of that in some way. And I determined that was out of scope for this particular process. But I haven't investigated what or taken it the next step to any suggestions about where I could outside of this particular.
So what's the responsible commentary around resourcing?
The submission was the submission was about I determined it to be out of scope because they were requesting council really support resourcing for us.
Okay, thank you.
Did that answer?
Yeah, because it's a lot of Maori cemetery all around the place in council ones are nearly full here or being full. But you know, in every Maori community there's a number of Urupa Maori that aren't resource just
Yeah, it's an issue. It's also an issue for that also becoming banks now for can no longer be used because of where they're located close to coastal marine area, coastal bridges. So these are that issue, of course. Okay, so I'll just move through where the responses to the submissions as they presented, which is firstly the evidence from the sensitive we're taking. So we watched that as we talked about here that the obviously polls, objectives and policies, and the 90 people saying don't it needs to work. I think we need to look at and sorting out the residential activity rule and the fire rule, in what ways they did that. The submission to amend the overview section for the market, so we'll to add the option of what we were doing amend. I'll go back to that section and reconcile that basically that potential merit. To amend NPZ for an R5 to exempt the land holdings owned by Operating Corporation. We've got time to do two things: one, peer review the evidence, and the expert evidence that they provided. And what we have a couple of things I can't. There seems to be an absence of consideration of overlays, or can't see the overlays or the site being mentioned. And they're not clear about whether they're asking for the whole site or to apply to the whole site. They haven't provided a lot deeper than that. So we need to go back to them and ask that, to wait to clarify that. In terms of the request for the leasehold land to be zoned purpose residential, at first blush, if they're already developed, you can't see what advantage there being to them, but it didn't seem to come out in the, and I haven't seen it come out in the yet. So we'll be stuck there with a bit more. And also, very against what we did across the rest of the team.
Just to respond to that, what about group? I was thinking the same thing. But they may want to redevelop, they may want to establish a relation facility there. I noticed that Google Maps actually has a couple of relation facilities identified in that cluster.
Okay.
So maybe redevelopment of the system side, maybe introduce accommodation or other activities. Those were the sort of things I would get the thing is more residential thing.
Yeah, there are still provisions, I think, that enable, and as I say, there's a clear distinction in the plan between fully serviced land and land as a service. So servicing the council provides, and so there's that's not a clear distinction there. So
I think residential ones. Yes. Yeah, so I suppose that was all very It's residential.
I think those are, you perhaps conflating a couple of different things here.
I know.
Yeah.
But the principle is there. I think that's very clear that there's the option of why it changes.
I think if we were to compare it, say, to discussions we had with Cavalli, the Cavalli approach would be to, we're talking about settlement zones, which are unserviced, essentially rural kind of zones. There isn't the equivalent in multi-purpose, but I think the distinction is quite clear, but we can have a discussion further with and see if, yeah, more explicitly what their aspirations are, and we need to, what a response might be to them.
I think it might possibly be the fact that yes, but it's not a public, it's a private. Has any barrier?
And I do take your point about, everyone probably was to become vacant, for example, if the house burned down. Additional rights fee, but it was going to balance that. I think it's what we did across the plan with other, the small zone coastal currently is on coastal residential, but unserviced. So what did we do in other parts of the plan for general zone land that was zoned coastal residential was unserviced, it became set. So we'll set it. But I should also add to this that in the 59 reason we have a decision from the corporation to rezone some areas of there and markets. So rural settlement. So because of all that, like taking corporation, really big corporation. So, so I think that's kind of what we've got when considering across the world in districts.
So I think I was struck by that as advocate as to why I thought it was something. Other than, throwing yourself there and doing the classification of the problems that represents one, but it's some other bit.
Right. Yeah.
Ask them this question. Always, I wouldn't stop you from asking him that question. What advantage do you see, or disadvantage do you see?
Yeah.
Retaining them with the same advantages. They want to say that's what it is.
Right. I think that's the question of what to discuss.
Yeah.
There's a procedure being a bit like 3R7. Or do we need to ask that?
No, I think that's a clarification. Yeah. Because it's not new evidence.
Right. We think to the request to amend FNDC to exempt and living report of maintained road. Well, we can review that on the environment for the disaster. But it was wrong.
Yeah.
The request to amend the overview section. Associated with the delineation between non-purpose and markets. I believe, but I think I've got this that they want all just justification as to my reason. So the reason for it.
Sorry, what was it?
So they wanted to exclude the, in the local zone constitutions to exclude the replaced school scale. And I have recommended that be retained. I accept this and they're not satisfied that I justified, that was justified them. So we'll take that with clear justification. I think that covers somewhat.
They make reference to servicing and site suitability.
Yes.
They make reference to that.
But that was like, it's a bit heavy handed. Because they could do a 5 square metre addition to a dwelling and have to come in like full basement. Yeah, I remember building the lily there.
Yeah, we'll have to follow. Yeah, that requires following up because that's certainly not the intention of the law to act in
And maybe you could clarify if the law could be included in that matter, maybe that is something.
I don't recall that requirement being in Rule R1 because it would be R1 as the building.
Yeah.
The density is controlled, which is for matters around outgoing and dwellings that the other provisions are for and apply, which is where it becomes more important. So we just have to check.
So is it an E6 servicing next to our servicing? Yes, recommended.
It's very,
Yeah,
engineers site suitability.
yes. So it's an engineering site suitability report that's required to determine compliance with its standards.
So that would go back to R1. It would be the R1. It would ultimately go back to it.
While we're on S6, there's reference to the engineering standards dates we're going to this. That's good.
Yes, okay.
But after the engineering standards hearing, that's going to be solution, just say engineering standards. And there's some clarification there. Those provisions.
Yes, so
Also, I'll make sure people that provision, if you already changed it, recommend.
Yes.
Yeah.
it's we remove that should by just looking at the extend to engineering standards.
So,
Is it right?
so, oh, you can say thunderstorm now.
Yeah, I'll be sharing.
You go, there's water.
Yeah.
She can thunderstorm.
I see two of the same product.
But it's carrying it on. It feels like a heat storm.
But I guess the board too.
Sorry, we must be distracted. Those who are looking for recording their answer.
But yes, well,
Sorry.
we'll need to clarify that between FNDC R1 and the S6, that there are no unintended consequences. Yeah, thank you. Move on to the next.
Yeah, but I think we might have to move closer. We've got the air conditioning and the rain.
So we got it.
Go back.
Yeah,
Let's go back.
yeah. I think we'll be out.
So in terms of the legal position for G2 trust, I've circled legal opinion. But maybe to help us sift out the planning points from the policy issues. I mean, there obviously are planning points here. And the 22nd of land overlay have been declared that these provisions are for enabling. We don't see them your scale exemptions.
Well, I will be fun. Last year. They keep talking about exemptions, but if not one will be saying this rule doesn't apply. All the things you have in this table were where the rules were more for this.
And sometimes they're actually the same.
So my understanding of exemption is it does not apply. These are more agreement.
I think as I responded at the time, there is some additional matters in those limited activity standards that will demonstrate the exact matter whether it's sort of it's going to be a citizen both types of activity. So to me, it's reasonable where there's that extra confidence. You can increase the level of connectivity. I think too, there is examples in previous ministry where landowners are differentiating. Argue the utility operators have different provisions. So for councils have different obligations. Actually, land ownership actually can make a difference to how we apply. And that is not standing the obligation in this that removed by
Oh, we got the stability. Yeah, we need to take it together.
Yeah.
I can hear you. I can actually hear you. Yes, yeah.
So there are still rules and standards, and so there are still 12 provided. So, the terms of servicing that requires, I think, so that still requires that servicing requirements get spoken within sites. So I guess it's, for this submission, we will take as read. Anyway, we need to just work out how we respond to the consent. Yes, yes. Yes, we're up onto that page.
And then we had a discussion about it can't be its own class of structure and frameworks. It has to be associated with things. And on the land, and in most cases, it's probably the production zone. And there's going to be some tension, and there's going to be some things that will be enabled, which will be more than what we can do. The question is, it's a matter of fact, question to a single file, really want to answer. It's just to concede that there were, the need to be activities provided.
Yes, yeah. The characterisation, paragraph 15D, that's the single overlay appears to be a solution in search for problem.
Yeah, certainly, obviously, the panel would be aware that the district plan was notified in advance of the EBA being promulgated, so sure. Anyway.
I think it's all. That one, are there any other? Are there any questions of us in relation to that solution? Yeah, okay, right, okay. So then the final, I think that there's bit of evidence for the voting.
I think we'll certainly provide you we'll have some thinking around occupation. I think that was a good question for us. I think we'll get a good answer. How we encapsulate that in a way that works is going to be challenging, but
I don't feel that he would be said, I got when it's an occupation. That makes good sense.
And it's but easier with us. The use of the word enable and
The only thing we want to say, I think that needs to be simple.
yes,
But we've had this discussion, I can't remember which year it was. But we've had this already once. And I think in some of our interim deliberations, we've landed on one. I can't remember which one it is. But I think we will following Conference advice as to whether we actually use the data or not. I just think we should just be system. There's circumstances are so different. Like justifies the other part of the way it's about the same section. Otherwise, I think we should try and having to be able to play trouble.
yeah.
That's how it's successful.
but looking at the chapter that's used.
Yeah, and I think there's probably scope to make changes to be consistent.
Yeah.
As long as we know what enable means.
Yeah.
What it means to the context of player on the speaker.
The resolving the tensions between the overlay and the underlying zone. Second discussion as to whether I think we answered our own question in discussion, whether potentially we need maybe another specific design. That's not, that has been requested.
I don't know. So again, that might be a scope question, even though but here's the thing, if it's a good idea, and you think that it's avoids a lead problem, and
Not sure that it does.
that's really what
It's whether it's between managing that and rezoning and so as well. So it's got to be a special zone, it's got to make three criteria and so.
I'm not satisfied with it. I mean, we get through them with content and they're hearing not. And and then so would you, if you think about the other, would you end up having two zones, 37 overlay, special zone, and Maori purpose. So, I mean, literally, you could just pick up an overlay, scribble that overlay. So, and I'll be equipped. But that's literally what you did. Literally what you did for the middle of it.
Funny you should remember.
Yeah, we did it at the middle of that place, so, you know, that fancy we used to one.
Yeah, I think one of the key questions well, the fundamental determinant of that is would there be circumstances where there is overlap? And in that instance, it's not so straight away.
We have treated silver last and purpose.
Potentially, you know. It shouldn't do, but it shouldn't is not it doesn't. So,
But I do, we'll just leave this in your hands, and we're not sort of asking them necessarily to do it, but it seems to me it's worth looking at.
I'd like to look at it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying we necessarily do it either, but
Yeah, 1%. So, well, that's the simple way to resolve it.
but there will be an issue of scale.
Yeah. Yeah.
But also that segues to the other issue that was raised by everybody about looking at the maps. I'd like to understand how they, because so also in Te Māori, if you start right from Maida, and it was all Pēnā Māori, it was all, now it's Māori people, you know, because of various things, it's Māori people, but yeah, it's Pēnā Māori under Te Reo, or they return under Treaty 7 land. They don't, Te Reo does not seem to be distinguishing between. So if we have discrepancies, mapping discrepancies across Treaty 7 land and Māori people, so I'd like to understand what that is.
What brings us to praise to go through that, but it's about the evidence. So, yes.
Sarah Quinn gave an hearing on that.
Yes. Going forward.
Yes.
And also they requested that a particular piece of being zone had the trees and been able to apply to it. And at first blush, could not find evidence that it was being a return under trees. So we back to them and said, at this point, they cannot recommend that change be made, but come back to your real evidence in the areas that it's that given descriptions in the legislation to your place in the act. Sort of things. So I need to look at that and plus any other thing that they've identified. Yeah. Then they were raising the issue of,
So just before we move on, where do we end up with them using Treaty 7 monies to buy private land? Should that be part of Treaty 7 development?
it wouldn't meet the definition.
Well, I thought that was the answer. I just wanted to know what the
In my view,
yeah.
yeah.
Can you set that on that panel? Yeah, set that up too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think in your response. I think we probably need to make a finding on that. It sort of makes things similar.
And that also applies, I know, every that had bought general land pre-settlement with fisheries. And again, we just fall back on the definition. Recall where the definition came from, but I didn't make it up. It comes, I'll have to go where it came from. The issue of the conflict between environmental services and building and structure coverage. I see them as controlling different effects. One is that improvement services is more stormwater runoff, and building coverage is more amenity. So I don't see them in conflict, but I need to perhaps.
So the rest of the biodiversity control should be in some of the rural zones. Or we do with we have a land area of threshold rather than percentage. That's where we and what we're also wrestling with, and we haven't made that final yet, is the rural production zone and the horticulture, whatever it's going to be, thing, whether they need to have those provisions in them. And whether if you haven't done the service for the rural zone, it applies to the ones that are residential focused. Just residential lifestyle.
So we.
Because it could be in circumstances with the it's ridiculous. Now we already read there in the that you can only build buildings and roads. That will inevitably limit the impermeable surfaces that you create. Driveways, if you've got a really, really long driveway, it doesn't create that much impermeable surface. There aren't a lot of activities that are permitted that involve the creation of massive amounts of paved areas. So that in many ways is self-limiting too. So we're cognizant of that, but also too we're having something that says 15% will be get to cycling impermeable surfaces. Not credible. Yeah, that's what it's thinking about. So anyway, so whatever comes out of that will probably influence this because you're dealing with the same thing.
So where and when
ones I've been really looking at.
we don't know where and when that will land, or I just need to say this has been addressed.
It might be that we might not issue into a direction to you. Or look, just respond and just acknowledge that the panel's looking at those provisions, and it might be that we just leave it there.
Yeah. The next is the MBZ3 and pre-settlements. Land rule R3 for residential activities.
That's what overlay was on.
It's in both there are things that are so. They are not exactly so. Actually, sorry, no. Offset the NBC says it has one additional to 1 unit per 40 hectares. I'll just check that. But it's comes back to the also Tapuati's the difference between the residential activity and the public hire Curzon way. So the thinking has been that you provide both and then use the one that is most advantageous to whatever your proposal is, and that by having them both that we're trying to be more enabling, but that's not how it's necessarily being interpreted.
Yeah. Right, easy. Just we need to clarify.
Yes. To be honest, I need to give that one a bit more thought. What I intend to do. Landed on anything.
The TSL 03 and 02 was something sort of work on that is the cultural versus commercial redress objectives. So we'll do a bit of think on that.
Yeah, we just want people, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yes, and it depends on structure and whether everybody's agreed. The post-government settlement entity might be different from views of the hapu that are within that collective. So it is complex, but we'll give you
I think the issue that Tiffany was trying to point to is that you can actually identify which parts are cultural and parts are commercial. And so some people might say, well, you can't do that on there because it's.
Yeah.
But then again, the cultural ones are mostly open space.
yeah, I guess at a high level, without kind of dragging this on a little bit too much, is that I acknowledge that I think we acknowledge you certainly can use cultural redress sites for commercial purposes, absolutely. But also acknowledge that, again, within a post-government settlement entity, there may be a range of different viewpoints on use of the cultural sites. So there's a lot of sensitivities around. So we'll try and balance that and come up with something.
As I said,
this weekend.
I was trying to make a point about, I understand where you're coming from, is the iwi. That's not a pigeonhole. But certainly as someone who was implementing it, it was very
Yes,
helpful.
yes. Yeah.
So anyway, there might be some halfway.
I think that was we
Fundamentally,
probably
yes, there's more in terms that she's gone through and identified particular.
I don't know. So the
things that-
really rest of
cool.
Yeah.
And we'll, look, there's obviously some other ones that we haven't quite got to, and we are going to turn into pumpkins in very shortly.
Yeah.
But there are other elements.
She's made it this one.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we'll I guess address those as probably the short version of that one.
Well, you might have some federal, you might have, some national direction.
Yeah.
So it's doing answering those questions.
Yeah, and the avoid in the RPS level and the relationship of Treaty 7 and Policy 1.
Oh, yeah. But whether you need to sort of tweak, why the note about an avoid objective zone not applying.
Yeah.
To commercial development, where you can make it that fine, where you just say the whole thing doesn't apply.
Yeah, the avoid is that right, that actually say will fly.
Because you end up having a button situation, the button case, where the overlay is just running a complete odds to the provisions of the underlying zoning and contradictory according to citing the underlying zoning on the basis that the overlay was appallingly badly written. But it created this legal thing that you've got to be very careful that one provision doesn't stymie the implementation of it. Avoid objectives.
Yeah. Do we run that risk here?
Well, yes, I think you potentially do it as well. Like, think about it, because if you have an avoid objective, and then you have an enabling provision in your overlay, and you don't meet the permitted standards for that enabling provision, you then default to, well, you then have to govern the avoid objective, and then you sort of end up sort of almost possibly becoming like a prohibited activity.
Oh,
So in other words, you're permitted or prohibited.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
okay.
Sounds
Quite
good.
important.
Yeah, no, that was actually, it was quite a good point.
Yeah. I think that's accept.
Just that the rain stops.
Thank you.
Yeah, well done, team. Again, I think it's a credit to your work. Both, notified 42 reports, obviously there's lots of submissions, and then just 3 people showing. I don't think it's because they can't be bothered. I don't think it's they've given up. I think it's obviously addressed a lot of the submissions. Well done. I mean, my impression is that there's not a huge amount of matters in contention. Tap a pat on the back when it presents itself. There'll be other days where they it's an upwards on the next hearing you have the Smith chairing the next hearing, and hearing number 12, which is
Just close.
Turuki whakataha, turuki whakataha, whakaere te wānanga, kia wātia, aira, kua wātia, huie tāki. Thank you, stopping the recording. And we do have to be out of here by 5 o'clock.